You think you know why your relationships keep falling apart. You blame timing. You blame compatibility. You blame everything except the invisible puppet master pulling the strings of your heart. But here's the thing about attachment styles. They're not just psychology buzzwords thrown around by therapists with too much time on their hands. They're the secret code that determines whether you'll build a fortress around your heart or throw it at the first person who shows you attention. They shape how you love, how you fight, and most importantly, how you sabotage the very thing you want most. So here's the question that might change everything about how you see yourself and love. What if your relationship problems aren't actually about the people you're dating, but about the invisible wounds you're trying to heal through them? Welcome to the hidden world of attachment theory, where your childhood literally rewrote the blueprint for every relationship you'll ever have. You probably think you're choosing partners based on attraction, shared interests, or that spark you feel when someone texts you back immediately. Plot twist. You're actually following a script written when you were too young to even remember it being written. Your attachment style is like emotional DNA, passed down not through genes but through the 1,000 tiny moments between you and your earliest caregivers. It's the difference between someone who sees a partner's late text as a minor inconvenience and someone who spirals into a 3-hour mental breakdown about being abandoned. The cruel irony, most people have no idea their attachment style is driving the bus while they think they're in control of the wheel. Studies suggest that roughly 60% of adults have secure attachment, while the remaining 40% are walking around with invisible armor or invisible wounds that make love feel like a battlefield. Researchers have identified 4 distinct attachment styles, each one a different survival strategy your nervous system developed to navigate the unpredictable world of human connection. But here's what makes this fascinating and slightly terrifying. Your attachment style doesn't just influence who you're attracted to, it literally changes how your brain processes love, threat, and safety in relationships. It's like having different operating systems for the heart, each one running completely different programs when it comes to intimacy. The fortress builders live in a world where independence isn't just preferred, it's essential for survival. If you have dismissive avoidant attachment, you've turned emotional self-reliance into an art form. Your nervous system learned early that needing people equals disappointment, so it built walls so high that even you sometimes forget what's behind them. You're the person who feels suffocated by too much affection, who needs space when your partner needs closeness, and who can end relationships with the emotional efficiency of canceling a subscription. Your brain processes intimacy like a threat to your autonomy, because somewhere deep in your neural wiring vulnerability got paired with pain. The biological mechanism here is fascinating and heartbreaking. When dismissive avoidants experience relationship stress, their cortisol levels actually decrease rather than increase. It's like your nervous system hits the emotional mute button, flooding you with stress hormones that make you want to run rather than connect. Research indicates that people with this attachment style often had caregivers who were emotionally unavailable, critical of emotional expression, or who rewarded independence while dismissing emotional needs. Your relationship superpower is your ability to maintain your sense of self in partnerships, but your kryptonite is that you might maintain it so fiercely that your partner feels like they're dating a beautiful, emotionally unavailable statue. Connection feels like quicksand when you're built for solid ground. The anxious seekers live on the opposite end of the spectrum, where love feels like a constant audition for acceptance. If you have anxious attachment, your nervous system treats relationships like a smoke detector that's way too sensitive, going off at the first sign of potential abandonment. You're hyper-vigilant to your partner's moods, analyzing every text for hidden meaning, and your brain has turned relationship security into a full-time job that you never feel qualified for. The cruel twist is that your deep capacity for love often comes wrapped in behaviors that push people away. Your attachment system learned that inconsistent caregiving meant you had to work harder for love, so now you approach relationships like you're trying to solve a puzzle where the pieces keep changing shape. The neurobiology behind anxious attachment is like having an overactive alarm system in your brain. Your amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, becomes hyperactivated in response to relationship cues that securely attached people barely notice. A delayed text response can trigger the same stress response that our ancestors felt when separated from their tribe in dangerous territory. Studies show that anxiously attached individuals have higher baseline levels of cortisol and adrenaline, meaning you're literally living in a state of chronic relationship stress. Your superpower is your incredible emotional intelligence and capacity for deep intimacy, but your challenge is learning that love doesn't have to feel like a constant emergency. Sometimes the very intensity that makes you an amazing partner is the same intensity that makes relationships feel exhausting. The contradiction dancers have perhaps the most complex attachment style, where wanting love and fearing it exist in the same breath. Disorganized attachment is what happens when your early caregivers were both your source of safety and your source of fear. If this is your attachment style, relationships feel like approaching a fire when you're freezing, knowing the warmth could save you or burn you alive. Your nervous system never learned a consistent strategy for getting your needs met because the rules kept changing. Sometimes emotional expression was welcomed, sometimes it was punished, and sometimes it was ignored entirely. This creates a push-pull dynamic in adult relationships that can drive both you and your partners to the edge of madness. You might find yourself desperately wanting closeness while simultaneously sabotaging it, or cycling between periods of intense connection and complete withdrawal. The biological reality of disorganized attachment is that your nervous system struggles to regulate itself in relationships. Research indicates that people with this attachment style show irregular patterns of stress hormone release and have difficulty returning to baseline after relationship conflicts. Your brain learned that people are unpredictable, so it developed multiple, often contradictory strategies for dealing with intimacy. You might be avoidant on Monday and anxious on Tuesday, not because you're being manipulative but because your attachment system is running multiple programs simultaneously. Your gift is an incredible depth of empathy and understanding of human complexity, but your challenge is developing a coherent sense of what you actually need from relationships. You're playing relationship chess while everyone else is playing checkers. The lucky ones make love look easy because they learned early that people are generally trustworthy and that relationships are safe harbors rather than storm zones. Secure attachment is what happens when your early caregivers were consistently responsive, emotionally available, and helped you develop a nervous system that can handle both intimacy and autonomy without panic. If you're securely attached, you probably take for granted abilities that others spend years in therapy trying to develop. You can miss your partner without panicking about abandonment. You can need space without fearing that wanting independence makes you a bad person. You fight without catastrophizing that the relationship is over, and you make up without needing to replay the conflict 100 times to make sure you're really okay. The neurobiology of secure attachment is like having a well-calibrated emotional thermostat. Your stress response system activates when there's real threat and calms down when the threat passes. Your brain learned that relationships are generally safe, so it doesn't waste energy on hypervigilance or emotional numbing. Research shows that securely attached individuals have more balanced levels of oxytocin, dopamine, and stress hormones, creating a neurochemical environment that supports both bonding and individual well-being. But here's the plot twist about secure attachment. It's not about being perfect or never having relationship problems. It's about having the emotional tools to navigate problems without your nervous system treating every conflict like the end of the world. Secure attachment is less about what you do, and more about how regulated you stay while you're doing it. Now here's where attachment theory gets really interesting and potentially life-changing. Your attachment style isn't a life sentence carved in stone. It's more like software that can be updated, though the process requires patience, self-awareness, and often the help of relationships that don't activate your old patterns. Neuroplasticity research shows that the brain can literally rewire itself throughout life, creating new neural pathways that support more secure functioning. This happens through what psychologists call corrective emotional experiences, moments where your nervous system learns that the old rules about relationships don't apply in this new context. If you're avoidantly attached, healing happens when you slowly learn that vulnerability doesn't always lead to rejection. If you're anxiously attached, growth comes from experiences that teach your nervous system that love doesn't require constant vigilance. And if you have disorganized attachment, recovery involves developing a coherent sense of what safety feels like in relationships. The key is understanding that changing your attachment style isn't about thinking your way into different patterns. It's about creating new embodied experiences that literally teach your nervous system a different way of being in love. Here's the science that makes attachment theory more than just interesting psychology. Studies using brain imaging technology show that people with different attachment styles literally have different patterns of neural activation when thinking about relationships. Avoidantly attached individuals show less activity in brain regions associated with emotional processing, while anxiously attached people show hyperactivity in areas related to threat detection. But perhaps most importantly, research demonstrates that these patterns can change. Therapy, mindful relationships, and even understanding your attachment style can begin to shift these neural patterns toward more secure functioning. Remember, this is educational content and not a substitute for professional mental health guidance if you're struggling with relationship patterns that cause significant distress. The revelation that changes everything is this: your attachment style reveals not just how you love, but what you believe love means. If you're avoidantly attached, you might believe that love means losing yourself. If you're anxiously attached, you might believe that love means proving your worth. If you have disorganized attachment, you might believe that love is inherently chaotic and unpredictable. And if you're securely attached, you believe that love is a safe space where you can be both independent and connected. The beautiful and challenging truth is that none of these beliefs are facts. They're just the stories your nervous system learned to tell based on your earliest experiences of care. Understanding your attachment style isn't about excusing relationship behaviors or limiting your potential for growth. It's about having compassion for the survival strategies you developed and consciously choosing which ones still serve you. Your attachment style is simultaneously your greatest vulnerability and your hidden superpower in relationships. It's the lens through which you see love, the filter through which you interpret your partner's actions, and the compass that either guides you toward deeper intimacy or steers you away from it. The most profound shift happens when you realize that your attachment patterns aren't character flaws to be ashamed of. They're intelligent adaptations to the emotional environment you grew up in. Your nervous system did exactly what it needed to do to help you survive your early relationships, even if those strategies don't serve your adult relationships as well. So what does your attachment style reveal about your relationship needs? Everything and nothing all at once. It reveals the conditions under which your nervous system feels safe to love and be loved. It shows you the invisible triggers that can turn a minor relationship moment into a major emotional event. But it doesn't define the limits of who you can become in love or the quality of relationships you can create. Your attachment style is your starting point, not your destination. The most securely functioning people aren't those who never experienced insecure attachment. They're the ones who learn to recognize their patterns, understand their triggers, and create relationships that help their nervous system feel safe enough to love without armor or desperation. What attachment style do you think shapes your approach to love, and what would change if you started seeing your relationship patterns as survival strategies rather than personality flaws? Hit that subscribe button if you're ready to dive deeper into the psychology of human connection. Give this video a like if attachment theory just blew your mind, and drop a comment sharing which attachment style resonates most with your experience. Your nervous system spent years learning its current patterns, and understanding them is the first step toward writing a new story about what love can be. Share this with someone who might need to hear that their relationship struggles aren't character defects but intelligent responses to their emotional history. And let's build a community where people can explore the beautiful complexity of human attachment without judgment.